2002. Hello, people of YouTube land, and those that are part of Ted Green Eagle's Discord, those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and those listening to this on Spotify or whatever audio streaming platform we decide to put this on. This is the Movie Review podcast, where Ted and I review a director's filmography, and we go over the background info. Ted goes into the plot, and we talk about what we like and dislike about the film, and then we rank the film with the other films from the director's filmography. And obviously, I am Ted. I am Traductus. God damn it!
No. Today he's Ted. I'm Traductus. We got him.
What? This movie sucks. Where's my Yingling? I mean IPA.
Today it's bourbon, dude. We've had a day.
Oh, bourbon.
Hell yeah, dude.
Surprised you being out of Budweiser territory. You're not drinking Bud from the tap.
Oh, God, no.
At the factory.
God, no.
But anyway, yes, I am Traductus.
And I'm Ted. We're not switching today.
Oh my God. Yeah, and this is the Movie Review podcast, like I said before. And we are still on Sam Raimi. This has been a long time. As you can see, like, the time between recording these has been a while. Thank God we haven't uploaded them when we were supposed to.
Ooh, true.
That being said, we are on the second to last Sam Raimi film, which is Oz, the Great and Powerful, which was released February 13th, 2013 at the El Capitan Theater. Then released in widely through the United States March 8th, 2013, with a budget of $215 million and a box office return of $493.3 million. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Wizard of Oz, because oddly enough, there's a few people that are, it was a book series from like the 1900s, written by L. Frank Baum, and famously, there was an adaptation in 1939 by MGM called The Wizard of Oz. This is a spiritual prequel to it, and kind of an origin story for The Wizard of Oz. This is released by Walt Disney, and we'll get into some of the legal fuckery with that, because despite the novels widely being in the public domain at this time, certain aspects of the 1939 film are owned by MGM, and so therefore there was certain issues that came to be while they were making this movie. This basically ends up getting started with Disney wanting to make a live-action Oz film. They made a couple movies before, such as Return to Oz in 1985, and also The Muppets Wizard of Oz is the third one that they've made. And this basically starts out with the screenplay writer, Mitchell Kapner, who wanted to make a prequel to The Wizard of Oz based around the actual wizard's character and his origin, and actually took a few aspects of the third book into that, since the third book apparently actually has some of the wizard's origins, although a lot of this is original material, since there wasn't a lot of thought put into the wizard's origins, besides the fact that he was also from Kansas. So, with that coming to be here, it's kind of funny how Sam Raimi ends up getting into this. He actually ends up being the third director that was ends up directing this on the short. Well, not the third, but like the third choice. Two people on that were that they were thinking about actually directing this includes Sam Mendes, who's the guy that directed Skyfall and Spectre, and also Adam Shankman, who was a judge on the television program So You Think You Can Dance. And he also directed The Pacifier. Okay, so he also directed some certain things.
I was gonna say I don't think Shankman's that bad, but it's again very limited sample. Mendes is an interesting choice. That, like, knowing what we've already watched and reviewed on this podcast, I don't know that would be terrible.
Yeah, especially since Skyfall was amazing. And despite my gripes with Spectre wasn't really that terrible either.
No, and also I think the way this movie carries itself and not necessarily needing a director to get through the flow, like, I'll leave this here since I don't think it belongs in likes or dislikes necessarily. Like, it's definitely a Disney carried film where, like, you can tell where Disney has its influence, that, like, you don't necessarily need the director to put their feel onto things. That I think the places that Mendes would have had an impact, that's a really interesting choice.
Yeah. And speaking of other interesting choices, we're going to go into the casting, and obviously The Wizard of Oz, Oscar Zoroaster, Frederick Isaac Norman Hankel Emmanuel Ambrose Diggs. Jesus Christ. Is played by James Franco. Now, originally, they were going to have Robert Downey Jr. for the role. He turned it down, and then they were going to cast Johnny Depp. However, Johnny Depp had commitments with the movie The Lone Ranger, so they ended up giving the role to James Franco, who actually accepted $7 million to star in the role, and this was like 5 months before filming was scheduled. I have a feeling that he probably got this role due to the fact that, you know, he worked with Raimi previously in 3 other movies, and to prepare for the role, he actually was trained by magician Lance Burton. And that is about all I got for, like, alternative castings. And I haven't gotten anything for, like, why certain people were cast, but we'll go into, like, the rest of the cast. We have Mila Kunis as Theodora, who, spoiler alert, becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. Rachel Weisz, who plays Evanora, who plays the Wicked Witch of the East. Michelle Williams as Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. We have Zach Braff as the voice of Finley, the Winged Monkey, and is also
he exists early in the movie, but I don't know that they mention the name.
He's Oz's assistant earlier in the movie. Then we have Bill Cobbs as the Master Tinker, who is the guy that ends up building the Tin Man, which in the books is called the Tin Woodsman. And I wonder if that's one reason why we don't see any, like, direct references to the Tin Man.
Well, we're gonna come back to that. Hold on to that thought. We're coming back.
And by the way, that's not the only issues that we kind of have with certain things in this, because Mila Kunis, while she has the green makeup, she was not allowed to have the trademark mole that the actress that played the Wicked Witch of the Rest of the 1939 novel, because it was too close to that version of the Wicked Witch of the West. And MGM, like, threatened to sue.
That's motherfuckers.
As a matter of fact, they actually Disney and MGM filed trademarks at the same time, with Disney trademarking the title of this film, and then MGM trademarking The Great and Powerful Oz.
Fuck MGM. Yeah, fuck Disney too, but also fuck MGM.
Oh, and that's also why the ruby slippers aren't in this movie, because in the book they're silver slippers, and they decided since it was going to be color, the ruby slippers would have looked better on like a colored screen than silver, and so therefore they couldn't use the ruby slippers in this movie.
I can't blame MGM for that one, but also fuck MGM.
That being said, we also have Joey King as the voice of the China Girl, and also a handy capable person who asks Oz to fix. I mean, be able to get her to walk.
I wouldn't have put those two together, but now that you're saying it out loud, holy shit, you're right. God damn it.
And then we also have one of my favorite actors, Tony Cox as Nuck, or as Oz keeps on calling him, Sourpuss.
My name is Nuck.
and of course we also have Bruce Campbell as a Winky guard.
Fucking Bruce goddamn Campbell.
And the funny thing is that I did not find any references of him getting injured in this movie.
I'm almost disappointed, but he had too small a role to have the time to get injured.
Right. That being said, Mila Kunis, while putting on the makeup, it took like 4 hours and apparently days for all that green to come off.
Checks out.
That being said, that's pretty much all that I got. The movie got made despite MGM trying its damnedest to not have it get made because copyright infringement shit.
I am curious about MGM's involvement, but I know this isn't a place we're gonna get answers based on what we've already got, so I'm gonna try my best to ignore them. Anyway, moving into plot. Assuming everyone who's watching a movie fucking podcast has seen The Wizard of Oz, I'm not even going to break down all of the pieces. This is essentially the origin story and the breakdown of how The Wizard of Oz came to be. I don't know how to break this down without breaking into my likes. So it is essentially James Franco gets swept out of Kansas and becomes the Wizard of Oz, as you know him to be in the film, and that's where I'm going to leave that. Stallman, I'm as we break into likes and dislikes, I'm going to let you choose whether to do likes or dislikes first. Both of my lists, like, I have things to talk about in both. I don't know that one is more or less than the other, but my lists are short. So I'm going to let you choose where we start here.
I think we're going to go with dislikes, because my dislikes are pretty short on this. This is more neutral. Like, there's certain aspects of the CG that are kind of dated, but at the same time, with this being a Disney film and things just being cartoony to begin with, it doesn't take away from the movie.
If we're starting with dislikes, I'm gonna jump in right here, dude. The animation is very Space Jam-esque. Okay. Yeah. It's not that the animation itself is bad. It's bad that they are throwing real-life human characters in front of it. You can very clearly tell what is separated between the fantasy, the animated, the CG, and what is human. And I don't want to say that it's jarring or off-putting, but it's definitely very Space Jam-esque about put Michael Jordan on a Looney Tunes basketball court, put James Franco in a floating bubble in front of fake plants that don't exist in a fantasy land. Like, yeah. It's noticeable because of how different the two separate pieces are. I hate to call this a true negative, but it's abrupt and very in your face how.
Yeah, it's distracting, but it doesn't like kill the movie.
I mean, there is a piece of it that you recognize that he is the man from Kansas in a fantasy land, so you can kind of like offset it and live with it. But it is it is in front of you. It is not avoidable. You will, in fact, see the places that CG does not line up with human characters. 100% throwing that on my dislikes list for sure.
Yeah, I also have like some dislikes on. I think James Franco does a good job overall, but there's certain times where he just seems a little bit too slimy for his own good. If that makes sense. It's just sort of how his mannerisms are, because there's a lot of it where he's like comes off more as slimy and creepy as opposed to like being like a con artist, you know?
I think I'm gonna lump this into one of my other dislikes. It's not quite where you're going, but I think it follows the same train of thought. The comedy that exists in this is very James Franco movie.
Yeah.
What's it? I can't remember. This is the end. This is the end.
Yes.
Right? It's a movie about the fucking apocalypse. It's a comedy movie. It follows a very stoner, haha, funny humor. We're funny because we're stoners kind of comedy. And while this is less abruptly smoke weed, so this is funny, it's a very Franconian humor, for lack of a better term. Like, if you showed me this movie sight unseen and you asked me who the director was, I would tell you that it was James Franco.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, if you know that it's Raimi, you could spot certain Raimi-isms, but
I don't mean to say that as a detraction, but it also takes away from the purposes of why this movie got made. Franco's existence and his brand of being himself definitely takes over what the movie intends to be. I won't say that it's because he's good or because he's bad. Like, I think his performance is exactly what it should be, and we'll get more into what his role is for likes, at least for me. I just think that the Franco brand gets in the way of the purpose a little bit.
Right. And like the only other like dislike that I have is that I don't find Mila Kunis convincing.
Yeah,
like at all.
Outside of Franco and the voice acting, because I think those are fine in terms of acting performances. I think that the other human characters tend to be a little. I don't want to say Disneyed, because I think that's even like. Disneying them would upgrade them from what they were. It's pedantic, it's slow, it's over scripted, it's over enunciated. Like it's just an overact like you would think that a stage theatrical performance goes over the top to be that level of performance. They kind of do that for this movie in a way that's a little bit jarring.
It works in the beginning when it's like the black and white scenes because it's very old Hollywood.
Sure.
But then it gets to like a lot of characters are extremely goddamn naive, where it's kind of like you lose the suspense of disbelief, you know?
And the other part that's weird to me, Stallman, is the fact that, like, in that, the same as you say, that old Hollywood style, even as they get later into the movie where it becomes very modern, things are like, it's a very direct camera angle focusing on one person at a time who is talking, who is standing alone, and they are over enunciating and moving their mouths in theatrical ways. And like, it just, it's not bad. It just sits a little weird for the tenses of being a modern movie.
And for how Mila Kunis's character is, like, it's just more blatant with her than everybody else.
Hers definitely stands out, for sure. But I also think that's partially because she gets more speaking lines as two different forms of the same character. That, like, it does stand out a little more with Mila Kunis, but it definitely, like, you can notice it with just about everybody.
That and Family Guy doesn't help, especially when she does turn into the Wicked Witch. We're all just like, "Shut up, Meg."
Yeah, no. There's one line in particular where all of us unmuted, both myself and Ashley and Stallman, all unmuted, all at the same time, to just be like, "Hey, since they weren't showing her face, that was Meg Griffin, right?" And we all kind of came to the same conclusion, like not together. We all separately said it, and like, but yeah, it was Meg Griffin.
I will say that going into likes, like her makeup's pretty damn good. Like
makeup, set design, world building, all phenomenal. The external elements of things that go to create the whole feeling of a movie, man, great.
And I also like I do like the Wizard of Oz's character arc from like being like a con man, even though like it shows that he is a good person, but he doesn't feel like himself is a good person. And then he actually kind of just finally just like follows his good intentions more than his selfish needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest like for me. Like if it like of all of the positives of this movie, that's the big one, right? First off is that it does an homage to the Wizard of Oz movie that we all know and love, right? In the
a whole bunch of things, like
black and white
actors,
black and white, escapes Kansas into Oz, full Technicolor, right?
Which, by the way, that transition, that dissolve into that is
so smooth. I think the idea that like, again, I'm gonna spoil the Wizard of Oz from 1930, whatever the fuck. So if you haven't seen it, please stop now. The idea that like they find out that the wizard is a face behind a screen and he's not actually a wizard, it's the projection. Right. They explain the projection to you. They explain that he's a con man. They explain that he's not any sort of real magic, but he's a person for the people that the kingdom believes in. They like this movie gives origin to all of that, and
they even show while Mila Kunis, she's crying, like her, like you see streaks of like where it's actually harming her body, which alludes to
I'm melting, and its tears are doing that. This is a brilliant homage, like just as an origin story that is produced 80 years later. I'm telling you, they could not have done that part of this better. That element of things, flawless. The only real part I will draw that back is the origin story of other characters. Much as you mentioned earlier, Stallman, they kind of introduced the scarecrows, right? They didn't personify them, but it was there. They showed a lion who was in fact cowardly, and they introduced it, and it was there. As you say that the books, the Tinkerer, who was in fact a character and a notable piece of this movie, built the Tin Man, right? They didn't introduce that. It doesn't feel like it's a need. It's just an observation that like that's the only real place that they don't give you complete and total full background of the Wizard of Oz movie that was the original. Like this origin story is about as good as you can fucking do it. They nailed it.
And again, also, as we've been saying with like Sam Raimi, the tracking shots and being able to follow through with the action and everything, brilliant.
Yeah, I think too that like in the same sense that they did the world building, which I've already given credit to, the idea that they're using camera shots that really give the scope of things. That's the piece that you really feel Raimi in this, rather than Disney building their own movie. Like I said earlier, you definitely felt the Disney influence, but the places that Raimi gets involved are he makes you understand the entire scope of everything that they're doing, even when they're showing you the Emerald City as like an overhead drone type view, and it's that it's all CGI. It still feels like the important shot. They're not giving you things you don't need. Everything is in frame. Everything's relevant. Everything is the exact scope that it needs to be. I think this movie was directed beautifully.
And on top of that, it doesn't drag.
There are pieces towards the end where it feels like it's stretching a little bit, but it doesn't give you the certified Raimi drag. Yeah.
Yeah, like as in it bogs down in the middle with like 800 fucking scenes of like exposition, forgetting where this movie's at.
The only place that I'll say that this feels a little extraneous is that they added plot lines that didn't necessarily need to be there. They all kind of fit in, right? But so to give some credence to this, right? They build in their own plot line where you think James Franco's character Oz is leaving, like he's trying to create his own escape route, right. And it ends up becoming important to the plot, but they just kind of build around that for 15 minutes. That, like, okay, yeah, it's relevant, but also you just kind of buy in. It doesn't feel like a twist like you'd get from Christopher Nolan, where it feels important in the time. It just kind of feels like okay, here's another plot line, another thing to focus on. That's the only real place that it ever really like stretches extraneously, and even then, it loops back into the plot that it feels fine.
Yeah.
The other big like that I have for this, it feels light. It like there's a lot of Raimi movies that feel like they have more impact than they actually do. Right, that it feels like they are more serious or more dramatic or, you know, more suspenseful than they actually are. Even in the places where the comedic humor that we've given credit to, like Evil Dead, right? Like there's a gravitas to it that it still feels like a horror movie despite the comedy elements of it. This feels light and approachable, that like you could take your kids to see this as fans of Wizard of Oz, and it doesn't feel over the top. There's nothing that there's no genre switches. There's nothing that feels out of place. This feels very straightforward, direct. Could be a family-friendly movie with maybe slightly more than G rating, right? Like this feels on par.
Like, he literally didn't get in his own way in this movie. Which he easily could have, because we see him do that before. Oh, yeah. Even in movies that we like The Quick and the Dead. But he got... which makes that movie that he got in his own way in that. That's why that movie's great. But...
I think this was... we've said it for a few podcasts now that I feel like Raimi gets in his own way and it makes these movies less enjoyable to me. I think we've seen less of it in the Spider-Man films, so I think maybe we're refreshed of it. But even knowing that trope, I think this one is maybe the coup de grace of staying out of his own way and just making the movie that is good. Like this really stays on target, and I want to make sure Raimi gets his credit for that. This is good.
Honestly, makes me excited for like the next movie, with that being part of the Marvel franchise. And another thing that I really like about this movie is that despite it being like, you know, a spiritual prequel to like the Wizard of Oz and being based on the Wizard of Oz books, you don't have to know anything about the Wizard of Oz to watch this movie and enjoy it and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I enjoyed you going into the background and the idea that like he gets to take his creative liberties, right, and fill in the places that the book doesn't, but he also remains very true to the places in which he pulls from, both the books and the original movie, right? You can go into this even without knowing the Wizard of Oz, which you know, again, 70 years later is damn near impossible, right? But even without the knowledge of the Wizard of Oz, this movie still stands. And it also, again, if you go in knowing the Wizard of Oz, as you almost have to 70 years after the fact, right? Like everything ties in. Like this is a mastercraft of positioning for what this movie is. I really, really good job. I was not expecting to be as impressed by this movie as I am.
Yeah, same here. And this is coming from someone that doesn't really like adaptations of The Wizard of Oz besides the 39 movie and The Wiz. This did a really good job. A really, really good job. I guess, Stallman, that brings us to rankings. And I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to put this below The Evil Dead. I think this is a really good movie, but I don't know if... I don't really have any, like, enthusiasm to really watch it again, if that makes sense.
I guess that's fair.
Well, everything like above, like from Evil Dead Above, is something that I definitely would like go out of my way to watch again. If this was on, I'd watch it. and not complain. I'd actually enjoy myself to watch it. Or if somebody wanted to watch it, I'd be like, yeah, it's like, yeah, like that's a good movie. And it's like, I'd watch it. But like, if I was going to like try to stream a movie or something like that, that wouldn't be something that would pop in my head.
You know what? That's fair. I am really struggling with this one. You say that it is behind Evil Dead, which, if I'm doing the same, puts it at 7th. Okay, like I want to make it clear that it is.
I have Evil Dead pretty high.
There's a distinct difference for me between Evil Dead and Darkman, where I currently have them ranked that, like, at worst, Oz is there. But I'm also looking at First and Spider-Man and saying that, like, I think objectively, Oz is probably a better movie.
Right.
But I'm kind of also going in and saying, like, I don't know, Spider-Man 2 was really good. Do I really want it to be above Spider-Man 2? Army of Darkness, Quick and the Dead, as you mentioned earlier, Spider-Man 3. Like, there are some pieces in here that, like, I really enjoyed. I think I'm putting this one second between Spider-Man and Spider-Man 3. It is really hard to talk myself out of First with the quality of this film. Like it really truly is. I
have a feeling the only reason why you're not is because of how much Tobey Maguire knocks it out of the park.
Spider-Man 1 is a phenomenal film, and it comes at a point in time during us watching Raimi back to back that it feels way out of left field. Spider-Man still holds up. Spider-Man is still very good. I think the things that I'm doing here, to be honest, to differentiate those two, are my own nostalgia of Spider-Man.
Right.
And recognizing the nostalgia is not quite the right word, but the respect for the Wizard of Oz, and tying this movie to that, despite them being obviously two very different pieces. I think the other thing that separates them, and the reason that it's second instead of first, largely is the idea that it feels like a Franco movie and not a Raimi movie. And I think Spider-Man still kind of fits the vibe of what we're doing. That if I'm ranking them, man, it is so hard to dethrone Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, we got one more movie.
We do.
Which, again, you and I have low expectations because we're not really big fans of the Marvel movies.
Look, I've seen this movie. Admittedly, the upcoming movie, I have seen it. I
haven't.
It was just kind of an aside. Like, I wasn't super focused on it, and I know that my feelings on it currently are going to change when I am watching with intent. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I just think that where Spider-Man falls and the whole thing makes it the Raimi piece. I don't want to say that to tell you that this isn't his best movie, because objectively this one's probably better. For my personal rankings, I think it's Spider-Man. This is, of all of the movies that I've struggled to rank across all the iterations of this fucking podcast, I think this is the hardest movie for me to rank, because I could see it going anywhere from first to 7th. Like, did you ever think, like, what's number one going to be between, like, Wizard of Oz and Spider-Man? You know what's crazy? What's crazy is we like, when we go and pick new directors, right? We kind of look at the whole filmography and we talk about the things that we've seen and what we've enjoyed and what we haven't enjoyed, or why a director is interesting, and right, like Stallman and I put work into who we're picking next. And we went through Raimi. It was like, okay, these are a bunch of movies that I've heard of, a bunch of movies that I've seen and, like, want to give more respect to, and oh shit, Spider-Man, right? And the idea that, like, a Wizard of Oz adaptation is even threatening Spider-Man based on, like, going in entirely blind, right? Like, man, dude, this is, like, I really have to put respect on it. It is such a good movie. It is so good. This movie is so well done. I almost hope that next week we can dethrone Spider-Man, just so that I don't sound like a fucking nostalgia farmer. But goddamn, Spider-Man held up, and I'm pretty mad it's first. I like truly and genuinely, I wanted to be surprised by something else, and goddamn, Spider-Man was good. Anyway, yeah. So this has been Oz the Great and Powerful. That's unless you got anything else, Stallman, before I do my outro. Perfect.
No.
That's gonna wrap us up. As always, you can watch movies with us in the Discord. Days of the week change. I'm trying to do my best to post when we're actually watching movies. We've been shit at watching them and recording them. And if you see Stallman and I on a Discord channel, it's probably because we're watching a movie. Let's be completely honest. So hop in the fucking Discord and you can follow up. If you're interested in more of our content, we have plenty of movies we have reviewed now. You can go back through the YouTube and check the playlist that this one is in to check out all the movies through all of our different series, directors and the Bond series that started us all off here. And if you're interested in our individual content, you can check us both out on Twitch. Stallman at Traductus, myself at Ted Green Eagles. Both of those will also be linked below. As always, thank you guys for watching. And next week we wrap up Raimi. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.
Yep. See ya.